War Within, raids, dungeons, PvP, and delves. We get a deep delve into the War Within. This actually just came out on WoW's YouTube channel 38 minutes ago. This is hot off the presses, my friends. Let's delve into it. Yo, Trip, thanks for the prompt. Wowcast.
Welcome to a special edition of Wowcast, and thank you so much for joining us. Launch is right around the corner, and today we are joined by a few incredible guests to share how dungeons, raids, and PvP has evolved, as well as new features like delves and warbands. Please introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Laura Sardinia.
Hi, Laura.
I'm lead UX designer in the WoW team.
Hey, I'm Morgan Day, one of the associate game directors on World of Warcraft.
Hi, Morgan.
And I'm John Mark Hempel. I'm a lead gameplay engineer on World of Warcraft.
How has the team been approaching what's waiting for players at max level for the War Within?
As we've been talking about, the content that players will be experiencing once they reach the end game, there's really been three main pillars we've been focusing on. The first is variety. We want to make sure that there's all kinds of activities for you to do, whether it be in the outdoor world or with some of our new features like delves that are really going to add some new variety for those players.
I'm actually pretty excited for delves overall, in the sense that I think the Mage Tower was one of my favorite experiences in WoW, like, altogether. And if delves are if they can capture like any essence of the Mage Tower, I think it's going to be a W. Having said that, if I'm comparing delves up to the Mage Tower, I'm setting myself up for disappointment in the sense that like Mage Tower was like so good. So delves have a lot to live up to. The final delve, the secret delve, it's the 13th one, I think. 12th to 13th delve. It's supposed to be like the Mage Tower-esque one that's like actually hard. And provide some type of unique rewards too. I'm specifically excited for that one. But I think solo PvE content in general is something I've liked in WoW. Hence why I played so much hardcore WoW, which is basically like solo PvE for hundreds of hours. Right? Because when you play solo self-found, it's solo PvE. And then Mage Tower, I think, is pretty unspoken why it was so good. But yeah, if delves are a step in that direction, sign me up, baby.
Additionally,
Torghast maybe not so much, but I think the reason Torghast felt different was because it was mandatory for character progression and didn't give you any like crazy meaningful stuff, and it wasn't like the Mage Tower was unique and challenging and gave you great rewards, but not necessary. That's a recipe for success. Where Torghast was like, was mandatory, slow, boring, not that hard once you kind of understood what was going on, and didn't give you anything like that crazy, right? Like the Mage Tower gave you like some sick mogs. Like, are you kidding me? So I feel like there's some key differences, but yeah, fair enough. I think Torghast is an interesting counterpoint as to how to not structure solo PvE.
Really want to focus on progression and giving players new challenges to try to overcome in the end game. And finally, the story and making sure that that narrative is front and center. Now, whether that's tied into some of these features and some of the content that we built there, or maybe it's focused on the end game campaign that is going to be built out as players progress as well. Something that I think is going to be really transformative and I'm excited about for the War Within is one of our major features, Warbands. If you aren't familiar, this is a feature that really ties all your characters together. And really this is our opportunity to make sure that we're really respecting the time of the player behind the keyboard and not constantly asking you to, maybe re-earn something on one character that you've already earned on another one. That's all changing with the War Within, which is really exciting.
John Mark, can you tell us more about the significant undertakings that Warbands is about?
Yeah, it's no easy task to reimagine in a modern context what we've done over the past 20 years. I think, Morgan, at BlizzCon, you called this several features in a trench coat. Yeah. And it's very true. In a nutshell, it's really a philosophical shift in how we approach the game. Instead of being from a character focus, we're taking a step back and approaching it more from what the players accomplished over the entire time that they've played the game. Historically, we've added on pieces to individual systems from the engineering side to support features going into expansions. But if we could wave a magic wand and go back 20 years ago, knowing where we're headed today, likely we would have organized those things very differently from an engineering perspective.
Yeah, and I really feel like
this overall, I would say, is just a massive W for the player base at large. I think most, can you guys agree? Like, most people have many ults. Most people don't want to do the same thing over and over on all their ults, and most people like that character, or sorry, the account-wide progression system, where you're progressing your account, you're progressing one toon. Now, individually, me, Xaryu, Josh, personally, I do miss the days where people played one main, and when you tuned into Sidhu's stream, it was a shaman. When you turned into Peekaboo's stream, it was a rogue. You know, and people spent a copious amount of time into one character and really worked on that one character. Having said that, I think those days are gone, and people really, really enjoy playing a lot of different alts these days and swapping between those alts depending on, you know, let's be frank here, depending on the patch and what's doing really well. And people that want to do well, you know, switch between what's doing the best and what they're having the most fun on, and they don't want to lose their progress. So I think overall this is a massive W. I have to say though, like I do miss the days of just like one character, but I think those days are pretty much gone. So that's my perspective.
Like, this is easily one of the largest undertakings that our engineering team has had to, you know, develop for an expansion. You know, we always used to look at, you know, updates to future patches where, like, let's make this a little bit easier for your ult to catch up or earn some progression there, where now that is something that we're really architecting from the forefront and really beginning the conversation with that.
I think when it's all said and done, every engineering sub-team is gonna have touched this feature.
So what value do warbands bring?
It's all about being able to transfer stuff between your characters. If you have items that you want to send from one character to the other, you just put it in the Warband bank. If you have currency that you want to send from one character to the other, you can just grab it directly from all the characters that are on your account.
Oh, wow. That's nice. So previously you had to go to a vendor, swap the currency at a lower rate, mail it to yourself. Like, you have to remember where the event, like, it was such a headache. That's really nice. That's really nice.
Or if you're a druid and you're going through one of the old raids.
That's what I keep saying about Warathan. People are like, hey, Xaryu, what do you think about Warathan? And I'm like, bro, like, if you like modern WoW, you like Dragonflight, Warathan is just full of W's. Quality of life like that, everywhere you look. With the warbands, with the currencies, with the character-wide bank, or the account-wide banks, the warband banks. Like, everywhere you look, it's just better. It's just more quality of life. It's just more seamless. So if you like modern WoW and you're like, sign me up for that, it's just gonna be a massive W. It's gonna be 2 W's. War within, okay.
You get a piece of plate gear, your warrior can just equip it.
Yeah, one of the things I love about it is the shared renown, right? Like, there's so much reputation that I'm gaining across my characters that will all be combined and consolidated on one account-wide reputation there. And there's a lot of fun stuff that also enables when it comes to, like, trying to find, you know, more variety in the way I approach the game. For instance, I was leveling, I think, my second character on the beta recently, and I made sure to go out and, you know, turn Warband questing on so that I saw all the quests that I already completed. It's a little bit less opaque, so it's kind of transparent, and that way you know, like,
cool.
okay, I've done that quest on one of my other characters.
Yeah.
So I can kind of cherry pick all the reputation from quests that I haven't completed yet. Something else when it comes to, you know, maybe gearing that new character, there's actually a new type of item called Warbound Until Equipped, or WOO. This is a new item that will drop in all kinds of endgame content, including things like Mythic Plus and raids, where these will be bonus drops, where they'll drop slightly lower item level where you might have earned that reward, and then you can put that in your bank or send it to one of your alts.
So that helps a lot for alts, right? Like, you play in your main, you have a ton of gear drop, you don't need it anymore, but it's Warbound Until Equipped. You throw it all to an alt, and now your alt is like kind of equipped and ready to go. So they're changing the whole philosophy to account-wide stuff, which, once again, maybe not my personal preference, but I think it's just overall a W, right? For the player base at large, I think people love this. It's a great quality of life feature.
And actually, once you equip it on one of your characters, then it will bind to that character. So the fact that it binds to the warband means we can be really generous with that gear as we're dropping for alts.
I imagine as part of this overhaul that it's led to some unique challenges with the UI.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. UI revamp continues, and Warbands was a great opportunity for us to revamp the character select. Last time we did a big entry screen update was during Shadowlands. So with Warbands, we did a whole big user experience revamp there. We kept the right side list, but now you can drag and drop much easier your characters, and we have a favorite section there, which is really cool because they're all cross-helm characters that you can have. So you don't need to be back and forth choosing characters. They're all gonna be there for you, very, very easy. And also the tooltips are all new. Now you just mouse over and it's all there for you. So pretty great improvements overall. And also the new bank for your Warband characters. So a lot of good improvements that we wanted to make sure it feels natural to play as, and it just feels great. That's what a good UI should be, you know? So yeah, that's what we're looking for.
There's a lot of functionality out of that too. Like you can craft straight out of your Warband bank. So you can just dump all that stuff in your Warband bank, and one of your other characters who might be able to use that profession stuff will then be able to access it much more quickly. You don't have to mail it around, and it's really looking to streamline a lot of those experiences.
Okay, you still have to log over to the other. You still have to log over to the other character though, right? You still have to log over to the other character. I think no. I think you might have to log to the other character, but he said you can craft from the bank. So if it's in the Warband bank, you're on that character, you can craft. You don't have to go to the bank to get the mats. But I think you still have to maybe be on that character, unless I misunderstood. Either way, it's cool. I mean, it's just more quality of life. Yeah. The expansion is for mount collectors, pet collectors, and transmog collectors. This is just a collection game at this point. Okay, so I think that's an interesting point that you guys bring up. I generally agree. I think I actually had a friend reach out, and they said, should I play Warthen? And I said, well, if you are a collector, if you're a mountain collector or an achievement hunter or a transmog collector, yes, like you're gonna love it. Like Asmongold would love this. It's just easier in every way. If you're an achievement hunter, if you're farming mounts, if you're doing any, like it's just overall just like your wet dream, bro. You're like, finally, yes, this system makes way more sense. But if your problem with WoW was the combat or the class design or the, like say your problem with WoW was the lack of community because of flying mounts, or I don't know, I'm just like spitballing here. Like that's not changing, right? Like if you like classic WoW because you're on the ground and you can you just walk on your 2 feet and you run across other players and there's no flying, like well that's still not, I mean that's not changing in Warthen. So like that's not going to change, right? In terms of the combat style, with there being like you press a lot of buttons and there's a lot of AoE and a lot of mobility, like that's not really changing. In fact, you're actually getting more with the hero talent, so that's not really changing either. So anyway, maybe that'll help you make your choice. If you dislike Modern WoW because of those reasons, well, those are kind of staying the same. But if you already kind of like Modern WoW, but you want to enjoy a lot more quality of life, Warthen is going to be just like the greatest thing ever for you, right?
For Mythic Plus runners or dungeons, any kind of activity that requires a group, we also revamped that left panel, the little ear pane that you push it out. You can now apply raid markers much easier. You can also assign different folks in your group to do so, which before wasn't that easy. And also you can change very easily as well the difficulty of the instance.
One of the other things I love that we added is hubs.
It's nice.
Right? So on the main map, there's often, as you are progressing in the end game, there's all kinds of content that might be really consolidated in one area. And sometimes it's like, oh, there's so much stuff here, and it makes the map feel like it might have a little bit of clutter on it. So we now have a way to kind of consolidate some of that.
The hubs, as Morgan was explaining, when you get in the War Within, you're gonna see this castle city icon that we're gonna have in each zone. And Dornagal is the biggest one. When you click on it, you can see the city map. And one of the technologies that we wanna add, the hub gonna prioritize for you what is the most important content for you to do. Of course, you can choose to do something else, but we wanna clean up the surroundings of hubs and main cities. So that's the kind of tech that we're looking into UI as well, and we want to evolve and get players' feedback. Also for the end game, we have a new type of quest that's called meta quests, but those are end game important repeatable quests, and then they are there's the classic exclamation mark, above the NPC heads. But it's blue because it reminds of the old dailies. But you're gonna have spikes around it, so that's like, I should check this out. Yeah, so the hub when there's something available as a meta quest for that week, the hub will show that to players, so that's something that you should do. If you don't have too much time, you probably should prioritize those because they give very, very good in-game rewards. So that's the kind of technology that UI is trying to help players.
Yeah, that's really helpful.
You might be coming back, or you're veteran players, or you just want to, do the easiest thing for the week, and that's going to be out there on the map for you, so you don't have to go back to the icon soup.
Are there any extra quality of life improvements?
So they're just weekly quests. They're weeklies. They give even better stuff, and it's easier to see now. Okay, sure.
To the UI?
Sure, I've seen a lot of the community very happy about the search bars, so we keep adding those with Warbands.
Search bars own. Search bars are great. I'm not like a big fan of the new menus they made, but I will say this. Having the search bar owns. Why not put a search bar? It's great. You don't know where something is and you can search for it. I mean, it's just nice.
And we have a search bar there as well. In Dragonfly, we had the search in the options menu.
Yeah.
Professions, of course, if you're searching for something specific. Bags, we added that in Dragonfly.
Yeah.
And the talents. But now, the spellbook is getting a whole revamp, and it's so good to have a search bar there. The spellbook looks beautiful now. All right,
guys, am I old or is this confusing? Maybe I'm just not used to it. It's like when you get an update on your phone and you're not used to it and then it grows on you. I might just not be used to it. I feel like every time I look at this, I'm like, wait, what? But maybe I just need to give it some time. So warrior talents on the left, we have arms, and we have fury, and then general tab is up here for I would assume racials and professions and stuff. Then you have behind my camera, you have talents and spec. So spec, talents, spellbook, warrior, general, page here, warrior here, arms here. Okay. I think I got it. Maybe I need to give this one a little bit of just I haven't played that much beta alpha, so.
We can have 2 pages, and that way you don't have to paginate as much. But if you really prefer one pane, there is an icon at the top, which is the collapse one. It comes back to the original classic size. So we know some players really love that.
That's kind of nice.
We want to make sure that everyone is happy with the new spellbook. Having the time to do all that stuff makes us so happy, because we want to keep the classic WoW look, even though it looks modern, but it still feel WoW, and that's really important for us.
Morgan, earlier you mentioned you want to empower players to play the way they want to play. How is that going to be approached in the new feature Delves?
Yeah, so like we've discussed, Delves are really bite-sized content, really targeted on those players who love progression in the outdoor world and maybe aren't so excited about going into group content or queued content. Something that they gave us feedback on is that they really wish that there was a way for these to be a bit more difficult and maybe give them a bit of a challenge too. Delves, while the rewards might end at tier 8, so that the item level that you're getting stops there, the difficulty tier goes to 11. And when you reach that difficulty, there will be a hard mode version of Xaryu, which for people who might be familiar with some of those solo challenges like the Mage Tower of the past, this will be a new solo challenge for players to really, try to tackle over time. And we imagine this is something that will take quite a bit of effort and, progression to get to the point where you'll be able to defeat Xaryu at that difficulty.
To me, this is a tricky one. What's tricky about it is that you have to get the difficulty right. If it's too easy, people just own it, and it's not prestigious at all. The Mage Tower nailed this. The Mage Tower was hard enough. It was hard enough to tell your friends I beat the Mage Tower. I got the achievement. I got the cosmetics. It was something to be proud of. If Delves are too easy to where no one is really talking about it because everyone kind of cleared it first try, then it's not going to be that. But not only that, but it has to be somewhat engaging and fun. It can't just be hard. It has to be like Mage Tower was also very interesting, right? You had to learn the mechanics. You had to learn where to position. You had to learn the fight. And it took a lot of iteration to learn that properly. And that was the part of the process that made it fun. So for delves, like, they have something really cool here. I hope they can get that difficulty just right, how they did with Mage Shower, to where it's like you feel the self of accomplishment when you actually do it. You know? If it's one try, I fear that it's just like, you know, kind of whatever.
And waiting for you, if you're able to do that, is a really awesome, unique, kind of voided out version of that customizable delve mount that you're going to be rewarded with very early on in your delve progression.
Can you talk about the different varieties of delves?
Yeah, so with delves, there's 13 delves in total, and something that we really wanted
13.
to focus on was to make sure that each delve had multiple variants, right? So while there's 12 delves that you'll experience and be sent to, you know, a couple in each zone, every time you zone in, we wanted to make sure that, you know, it wasn't just some small tweaks here and there, like, oh, the spawning changed a little bit, or maybe there's some traps that look a little bit different. The actual objectives are changing. Sometimes the way you traverse through the delve completely changes. Maybe you're gonna start at the end of the delve this time and work your way backwards. So we wanted to make sure that these different variants were really distinct with each new delve. And we also wanted to make sure that, like I said earlier, with progression to be a large part of this. So there's a couple different, you know, aspects of that. For one, the Great Vault, which is something that a lot of our, you know, Raid and PvP and Mythic Plus players are familiar with, is going to get an outdoor row with the War Within. So the loot that comes from delves, we wanted to make sure that while it was bite-sized content, that doesn't mean it can't be really rewarding, right? So if you're able to, you know, work your way up and defeat level 8, which is where the loot kind of caps out at, your Great Vault will actually reward you with items that are higher item level.
Wait, yeah, you guys have I kind of missed that, but if we go back, you guys make a good point. There's no PvP vault. There's just a Raid Vault, Dungeon Vault, and World Vault. My immediate knee-jerk response is like, what the heck? But then, wait, that's actually kind of good. If you don't have to, if there's no vault for PvP, that means there's no RNG and PvP gearing, and you basically just get your arena cap and buy what you want. That's actually good. That's actually really good, right? That's actually really nice. It's like you just gear up how, like, you just gear up like the OG days where you just get the points and buy it. So that's actually a W. So that's interesting. So you have World, Dungeons, and Raids, and I'm assuming all of these activities would then give you, you know, gear. And if you want to like give yourself the highest chance of getting the best gear, you kind of do everything. So I don't know. It's a fine system for that. I'm glad it's gone from PvP though.
Get an outdoor row with the War Within. So the loot that comes from delves, we wanted to make sure that while it was bite-sized content, that doesn't mean it can't be really rewarding, right? So if you're able to, you know, work your way up and defeat level 8, which is where the loot kind of caps out at, your Great Vault will actually reward you with items that are higher item level than you would get out of like a Mythic plus 10 end of run chest. So it's really, really good loot.
Yeah, it's really
and
rewarding.
We want to make sure that
so you want to do it.
you're using that, you know, gear that you're in along the way to work through the different delve tiers and finally, you know, take the fight to Zekvir and by extension Xalatath as well, which also gets us into feeling like delves should be a big part of our endgame story as well, and making sure that they're paying into this narrative of Xalatath and all of our epic heroes that we're experiencing along the way. Something else that we added in the UI for delves is, you know, there's now a whole tab that exists for delves that will exist down with, you know, the adventure journal, where you can see Mythic Plus and see your seasonal journey there. Now when you go to the delves tab, you can find the Great Vault from there. You can also see Bran, who's your companion. You can change his spec and see kind of the progression there. So lots of fun UI additions and improvements that have made delves that much more fun.
Bro, like, honestly, this is getting me really excited. And, like, for me, I've said this so many times, but let me, like, just for the sake of this video, for me, my biggest problem with retail is really comes down to one thing, right? There's a lot of different whatever. You can have a lot of conversations, but it really comes down to one thing, and that's the combat. The combat on retail, when you spam a bunch of buttons over and over and over and over, and the life is like this. On like Kata, I think Kata had great combat. Kata, it's the rotations are still somewhat complex, but you're hitting less buttons and you see impact when you're pressing those less buttons. You have this feedback. I pressed Fireball or Fire Blast and the target's health went down. Okay. On retail, if you Fireball a target, most of the time their health won't move, or maybe it'll go down like 1% because the target had like self-healing and absorbs and a bunch of different stuff. And it's like, well, so I Fireball and it doesn't hurt them? Like, so it just becomes like you're disconnected in the combat mechanism. I think this is all awesome news. I think for me, the biggest thing that could get me excited with War Within, or let's not even say War Within, let's say Midnight, the next expansion, would be Blizzard saying, look, we're going to keep all this quality of life, and we're going to keep all these great systems, and we're going to keep all of this great stuff. We're going to take the combat to where it was in Kata or MoP, or like somewhere around there, like Legion even. Like just we're gonna put the combat back to like Legion or like MoP or something. But we're gonna keep all this quality of life. To me, I would be screaming off my rooftop. That would be the greatest thing ever. That would be like, yes, we have all of the pros of retail, but we still have the good combat. Right? Yeah. Yup. No. Perfect game right there. Yes. No. Wow. So this seems pretty split. I thought you guys would all agree. For the people, for the people agreeing with me, I understand, because that's my take. I think it would be the perfect game. For the people saying no, why would you not like this? Do you guys think the combat is better now? I'm assuming you guys think the combat is better now than it was in Legion. I guess that's the take. People like that. Yes. Okay. Combat is better now. Combat's better now. Okay. For PvE specifically. Okay. So let me say this again then. For me, that's the perfect game. It sounds like the community is pretty split on this one. So maybe Blizzard should not do that and say, Xaryu, you're old, go touch some grass, and not do that. And maybe I'm the odd one out. But I think, just to be very plain, that would be my perfect game, where you have all of this quality of life and these systems of retail, but you bring back that old school combat. Or not even old school combat, because we're not talking classic era where it's one button. We're talking Kata, MoP, Legion-ish combat where, I mean, let's be honest, those were still pretty complex rotations, but you could just see the impact of each spell that you pressed. If I'm a warrior and I press Mortal Strike, you can see the health chunk. You can feel that connectivity in the combat. It's not this disconnected, like, I'm spamming buttons and nothing is happening kind of a thing, right? So just to be very clear. Anyway, to me, that would be my perfect game, because honestly, like, transparently, this stuff is pretty exciting, but like the underlying combat mechanism for me is just like still like heartbreaking a little bit, right?
The team has also made significant changes to the Mythic Plus dungeons. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so actually, not only is Mythic Plus getting some changes, but also the core progression of dungeons has shifted quite a bit. So if you've been playing Dragonflight Season 4, you might have seen that Mythic 0 has actually gotten quite the facelift. You know, something that we have noticed in the past is Mythic 0 was great for like 2 weeks of an expansion, and then nobody really needed to do it anymore because they had just progressed into Mythic Plus. So with the War Within, Mythic 0 will be the equivalent of what, you know, if you haven't played since Shadowlands, Mythic 10 might have been. So it's quite difficult, and will be equally as rewarding. But you know, we wanted to capture that audience of people who loved that feeling of the mega dungeons where you know, there's still progression, but also there's no timer, right? So if that was something that maybe put you off from Mythic Plus, this is something that you can still do with your friends, and hey, you can run AFK if you need to in the middle of these. But for Mythic Plus itself, we really took a huge step back and wanted to do a major affix refresh.
Hold on, I'm gonna pause here. One of the things I was confused about with the timeline and the scope of War Within is it comes out in 10 days or 9 days for early access on the 22nd. August 22nd is early access. Mythic Plus doesn't come out till the 17th of September. That's 1 month, almost. A couple days, less than a month. In my mind, I'm like, bro, what are people gonna do for a month? You level in a day. What are you gonna do? this makes it make more sense. If Mythic Zeros are actually hard, that makes sense. You can Mythic Zero and grind. That's not correct. I'm pretty certain I'm correct. Double check the calendar. It's the 17th for Mythic Plus. It's the 10th for Mythic Zeros, I believe. That is correct. I'm pretty sure I have my dates correct. 'Cause the reason why is because I'm a streamer and I'm trying to plan out like my my content schedule, and I'm like, bro, I'm gonna hit the max level on the 22nd or 23rd, and there's no Mythic Plus. So like, what am I gonna actually do like for a while? But hey, man, if the delves and the Mythic Zeros are hard enough, like maybe that'll be the maybe that's what we play for a few weeks before Mythic Plus. Maybe that'll make more sense, right?
We have gone through multiple iterations of that on the beta. You know, we got a lot of feedback from our first iteration of it and have really pivoted significantly since then.
It was kind of neat because we had some players that said, we really like the direction of these affixes. These I don't know about. And then other players that felt the exact opposite. I'm not sure about these, but I really like this direction. And really what it helped us crystallize was we had multiple groups of players that wanted different challenges out of the same Mythic Plus system. Historically, affixes have been a one-size-fits-all approach to challenge and variety. But it was kind of a cool moment. Morgan came to the gameplay engineering team and was like, hey, we got this feedback. We have this idea for making affixes target different level ranges rather than applying to the entirety of Mythic Plus. And the design solution ended up being pretty elegant for engineering to implement. It was like this beautiful confluence of events where we were able to turn this around within, I don't know, 2 weeks or something like that, and get the full revamped system back on the beta for players to test.
Yeah, it was really awesome to see kind of that all come together so quickly. So, you know, what players I've seen now and what will be going live with The War Within Season 1 is a version where Xalatath actually plays a major role in the affixes, you know, from the beginning up until level 12. And it's very much one of the goals we had to make sure that the story plays a part in all of our endgame content. So we really wanted to kind of achieve that by having her kind of show up in your Mythic Plus dungeon and maybe throw some spells at you and mess with you.
That's cool. That's cool.
You know, we're coming up on the 20th anniversary of World of Warcraft this year, and if you're coming back from a break or if you're a completely new player, just learning the dungeons can be daunting on top of affixes.
Someone in the chat says, you will not read this. I just wanted to read that.
And things like that. So this sort of granular way that affixes apply challenges to the dungeons allows players to engage with them in the way that they want to be challenged.
Something that we added in Dragonflight, which is the follower dungeons, are great for that because you can have NPC companions, which are not real players, playing with you through the dungeon. And let's say you just changed to a new spec, you want to be a healer now, and I really want to try that first before really going to a dungeon with new players.
We know that players in dungeons often are afraid of trying out new specs. And with hero talents, there's different flavors of new combat for people to try out. And follower dungeons provide a way for you to just go in and feel it out and not be too concerned about how you're impacting other people.
Approachability has been mentioned a few times.
That's
How are you
fine,
applying
I
that to
guess.
PvP?
Yeah, there's actually a new feature that I am personally going to play quite a bit, where you're going to be able to experience essentially.
So there's pros and cons to something like this, right? I think it's a fine way to move for retail. I think it's the right decision. There are pros and cons. The more solo play you can push players toward, or not push players towards, but even offer players in an online universe with other players also playing, means players might interact with each other less. It's kind of like if you tell an introvert, you don't have to go out, like they're probably going to stick to themselves. And it's like, which might mean less interaction for players at large, because players are going to start spreading out and just like, well, I can just kind of do this solo now. Well, I can get my gear through delves, or well, I would have found a group for a dungeon, but I'm going to do it solo. That's the drawback. I just want to offer both sides. Because I do think the pro is the accessibility, and the pro is like, okay, well, I might have never tried a healer, but you know, let's just heal this real quick in a follower dungeon. Oh, this wasn't too bad. Let me actually queue up a real one. So there's upside. There's massive upside. The downside is you could make a social game a little less social this way too, right? Garrisons are a good example of this. Back in Warlords of Draenor, in mid 2010s, they brought garrisons out, and everyone's like, cool, I have player housing kinda. And everyone didn't leave their garrisons, and the cities felt empty, and Blizzard's like, oh crap, we need to get people actually engaging with each other in the cities, or else our game feels like no one's actually online. So let's not go down that route. Similar with this, it's like if they should be very careful that it doesn't take away from the social experience of an online virtual world, because you're kind of treading on that path, right? Once again, I think it's a good choice. I just want to lay out that you are treading on that path.
Actually rated battlegrounds. It's called Rated Battleground Blitz, which is a smaller number of players, and you'll be able to earn conquest and all the awesome rated PvP rewards while playing battlegrounds. Because we know there's a ton of people who love battlegrounds, but the jump into arenas sometimes might be a little bit scary. That is a much more smaller experience, and each little mistake counts for a lot when you're in an arena. Where in a battleground, there's a lot more going on. Usually they last longer, there's objectives. So we really are excited about that new feature. I know I have done a ton of, I know the community calls them YOLO RBGs, where you can just do RBGs, don't worry about voice chat, you just kind of go in and play. I always love running into those. So having this feature will kind of take that place for me. So I'll be able to earn my conquest early on in the season. I know we mentioned the Great Vault quite a bit earlier when we were discussing this. We actually got a lot of feedback from our PvP players that they don't love having to have the Great Vault be such a big part of their itemization and gearing journey. Not only does it add some potential randomization, right? Like maybe first week of the season you got a weapon and I don't, and that kind of can create some imbalance there. But also, like we're talking about accessibility, it can also cause problems where, maybe you're a couple weeks into the season and you just now want to get into PvP, but there's no catch up on the Great Vault. So you can feel like you're permanently behind on PvP, and it's maybe the barrier to entry is a little too high for you to get into that. So not having that in the Great Vault actually solves a lot of problems for us.
I love this. Like we talked about it earlier in the video, because we kind of skipped over it in that Great Vault screenshot somewhere, wherever it was. And it was right here, and I was like, wait, they forgot about PvP, but no, this is actually a massive W. Like, it's actually really nice. As a lifelong PvPer, I appreciate this. So you basically just play the game, you buy the gear from the vendor. It's very vanilla, which is a great flavor. So that's
giving
nice.
Players more agency and how they're rewarded, and also we have much stronger catch up on things like our conquest currency for PvP players. So we think that will be a big step forward for that audience, and hopefully inspire some people to check out PvP in the War Within.
Raiding is an integral part of endgame. How is the team approaching raids this tier?
Yeah, so Nerebar Palace is going to be an epic experience. Nerubians galore in there, and one of the cool new features that we're introducing with War Within is to play through the raid, or at least experience the ending with Queen Ansarak solo. So we wanted to make sure that for people who were really engaged in that story at the end game, but maybe didn't want to go into queued content or don't have a whole group to go into the raid with, they'll still be able to see that epic finale. Something else that I think is really fun. There's
where do they see this? I missed that. You can go in solo and see the finale. Go in where? A solo raid? You just zone in and see. Hold on, I'm gonna re-listen to exactly what he said here.
Part of endgame. How is the team approaching raids this tier?
Yeah, so Nerebar Palace is going to be an epic experience. Nerubians galore in there, and one of the cool new features that we're introducing with War Within is to play through the raid, or at least experience the ending with Queen Ansarak solo. So we wanted to make sure that for people who were really engaged in that story at the end game, but maybe didn't want to go into queued content or don't have a whole group to go into the raid with, they'll still be able to see that epic finale. Something else that I think is really fun. There's a lot of.
I have a lot of questions. Do you kill the boss solo and then see it, or do you go in as a solo difficulty and it recognizes that you're solo and just plays the cutscene, so you can play the cutscene without actually doing it? It's just for the lore. You kill it solo and see the cutscene. Just a video. He says you can go in and play it solo. I don't know what that actually means. The reason, I feel like I'm pretty split on this one. Once again, it goes back to the age-old thing. It's like increasing accessibility, but decreasing reasons to actually party up and play the game. So like in the past, you take like a really old example, like, well, let's just say Naxxramas in classic era. And it's like, you had this end goal of like, you see the best guilds clear this thing, and you want to just see that end boss. So you have something to work towards to see it. With a skip mechanic like this, where you can kind of just see the end of the lore without doing it, I fear that it's gonna undercut the playability a little bit, because it's like, well, I already kind of saw it, and I'll just skip this tier then. Having said that, if the model Blizzard wants to move to is to create War Within as this account-wide collectible game where you log in, you kind of play delves kind of solo, you can do solo dungeons, and you're kind of caught up on the lore because the lore is intertwined in everything you do, and people are playing and not playing because, you know, the average WoW player's age is getting older and older, and you have less and less time. They want to respect that, but you haven't done the last 10 raid tiers because you don't raid anymore, really, because you're more of a solo player. If they want to move towards catering to that player, which, let's be honest, is probably a very growingly it's a slow increasing majority of the player base, probably because people are getting older. It's like, well, maybe you should allow the majority of your player base to actually see the ending of the tier to some degree, so that you can have players finish that tier mentally and then move on to the next one when new content's released. Like I said, I fear that that's gonna undercut the whole system. Partially like undercut the whole system. This is a pretty big decision from Blizzard. It's a pretty ballsy thing to do. See how it plays out.
Variety in player skill across all of our player types in the game, and we have a lot of difficulties for them. But even within a single raid, there can be a lot of, you know, progression that you're experiencing. And with Dragonflight, we added a new item upgrade system where you could upgrade some of your gear. But some players also found that they might not be able to quite get over that hurdle on one of the, maybe the end boss or something that comes as the penultimate boss. So we're adding a new quest that will unlock about a month into the War Within, that every week you'll get a little bit more powerful. It's kind of reminiscent of like Hellscream's war song back in Icecrown Citadel, but you'll have to kind of earn your way through that progression. So not only is there awesome gear to be earned as you progress through the raid, but we wanted to make sure that for people who might take a little bit longer, there's some more progression along with just the gear.
That buff's applied throughout your warband, right? It's not just on the character.
Yeah, that's another really fun thing. Again, like that was something that maybe would have just been applied to a single character, but in War Within, that buff is across my whole warbands.
That's cool.
While we are talking about raids, I would love to bring it up, the self-highlight option, which I'm a huge fan. You can highlight yourself and persist that. But now you can even have an icon on your head that nobody can take from you. So that is awesome. You know, for players, I'm included, that I cannot find myself in the whole...
That's good. That's good. I mean, I think of a player like Peekaboo, who's just like, he's kind of like lost all the time. He doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what's going on. Something like this is just going to help him out. Like the accessibility of like, okay, you're right in the middle of your screen. You know, your character is still there. You haven't gone anywhere, you know, and he's just kind of bumping into walls and stuff. And it's like, okay, I know where I am. I can start to move again. And it's going to help people, you know, start getting those motor movements, you know. So I think Pika will appreciate this one.
Chaos of a raid boss or even Mythic Plus, there's also another option that's called Show Silhouette When Obscured. If you have that on, there is a silhouette of your character between that pillar. Let's say it's a pillar, so you see your character there.
I always call this like the flag boss.
Yeah, Peekaboo, like he loses his like himself all the time. I think this is gonna be nice. He's just like, okay, there I am. You know, there I am around the corner. You know, someone like me, I've been playing this game my whole life. You know, maybe not for me. Like I already know exactly where I am in every situation. But you know, yeah. Oh, that's a wall. Oh, you know, yeah.
Boss or the tree boss, where it's like, oh, the flag is in my camera. That's really cool, Laura, and I love that. And you know, not only those cool options, but there's so much more to explore in the War Within, and I'm really excited for our players to come on this journey with us. Both players who have been with us all through Dragonflight, as well as players who might be returning.
Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this look into endgame content, and we look forward to seeing you in Kazalgar.
I'm not gonna lie, this was good. This was good. We heard a lot of good info, and it gets me excited now that it's getting closer. My only thing is, I think we talked about like midway, it was like the whole combat kind of side conversation, and you know, maybe I'm in the minority there, but everything else seems like really nice. Like, I mean, it's really only, it's just a bunch of W's. Like, I don't think anyone's upset about any of this stuff. It's great. So guys, we are 9 days away from early access, or 13 days away from full launch. Any second. Yeah. I'm livid. I'm pissed. Not worth for new players. I think new players would like this. Am I going to play Throne and Liberty? No plans on it. Pay to not play late. True. True. You guys excited about this? W's or L's in the chat for this video at large. Gotta say it's a W, man. Gotta say I'm pretty happy with it. Gotta say. Wait, for the L's, why do you think L? Really? What could you be mad about? What could you be mad about? Is it like what is there to even put an L about? Is it just the combat thing? Like you wanted more changes in combat? Because like that's the only L I can think of. It's too pricey. Oh, like the early access thing. Fair enough. The season starting mid-September is kind of an L. Yeah, it's kind of delayed. Fair enough. Okay. Because there's no new features. I mean, there's a lot of quality of life being added and features in that regard. So yeah. Augmentation is not deleted yet. Bro, you know what's crazy? I don't even know what an augmentation evoker is. Like, I quit before augmentation was introduced. I don't even know what that spec does. Like, I have no idea. Simple way to put it is I love WoW, but retail isn't WoW anymore. I mean, retail to me, like the way I think about it is retail is like WoW 2. It's gone through so many iterations. It's like this new thing. What's helped me in the past after long periods of not playing retail is to not think of retail as World of Warcraft. It's to not think of retail as that game you played as a kid, but to think about it as this just like brand new thing that offers completely different stuff. And it's actually really good when you think about it like that. But it's really beneficial to disassociate it with World of Warcraft, in my opinion. That's helped me a lot. Like, just be like, okay, let me appreciate WoW for what it is in 2024, which is this whole new thing.